Hi guys, Cassie here today. We're going to be talking a little bit about where and buyers buy, also known as the web I have been weaving for many, many years. So, today's live is all about where and buyers buy. What does that mean? And how this is created a part of it's really a part of the dispositions process, but it starts in acquisitions, right? And a lot of people don't teach this way. They want to actually separate acquisitions and dispositions and separate all of these things into categories that aren't interlocking, when truly they are interlocking. We have always had a motto around here. We actually cross-train everybody across platforms, including in the title and transaction coordination process. All of our team is trained on that. And admittedly, that is a high level of training. Now, obviously, they don't start out at this all in the beginning. But there's just so many notes of the dispositions process, the transaction coordination process, the title process that is in acquisitions. And where we started training this, I came up with the profit calculator, right? Because during that acquisitions process, it is so entirely important for you to not just get an ARV, for you to not treat ARV like it is just the highest possible price point you can justify through comps, but more so to understand the actual exit strategy and where the end buyer is going to buy for a fix and flip. It's really, really crucial to understand that buyer's process. It's really crucial to understand what buyers in certain markets look like and understand that there's a variety of different types of buyers. It's really crucial to understand that, if you learn this part of the process, you think like a buyer, right? That you are going to get those contracts to the finish line. Now, I see this all of the time. We get tons of deals sent over to us, and obviously we coach and teach a lot of people, how to do this process, right? And they'll be utilizing my favorite by favorite I mean least favorite. They'll be utilizing an ARV model or like some other model that they're taught to get to a number. Sometimes it's 50% of the ARV, or they're using some price per square foot model and this, that, and the other. And they have to understand that, while that might work on some deals, while that might be a good calculation in a certain market at a certain time, and I mean market by location as well as market cycle, time in the market, that might work to get you by. You have to advance your knowledge. You have to advance your education. And this is something that I created so that we could do that from the beginning, right? The profit calculator is the fastest build out of this, but I want to talk about like the fact that I had built out a very intensive spreadsheet for this very thing, simply because, for me, it really started with when we were purchasing fix and flips, understanding what our costs associated were with that fix and flip, aside from, a hard money lender, insurance, so on and so forth. I wanted a place to put all of that information, those costs associated for me, so that I could project what my profit would be. And so that I could project, the marks and I needed to hit with the fix and flip so that I could list it at the price, sell it at the price, but also the time frame, right? So we had actually taken, down some flips that took us much longer, and it ate up so much of our profit, right? And so I had all kinds of boxes to fill in, right? This wasn't something that I could teach somebody on acquisitions. This is not something I could train someone on our team to understand or fill out while they were on the phone with the seller. And for us to teach that, it was like I was inevitably getting a ton of questions on every acquisitions call for months on end. And so this is where the profit calculator was born. I've gone over it a little bit before on comps and underwriting video live for you guys in here. You guys can definitely feel free to check that out. I am going to go through it in detail again today because I want you guys to truly understand what the web is, right? And I want you guys to truly understand what some of these numbers and calculations mean, where they come from, and what that really looks like, okay? So, is this thing on? Yes. Can you hear me? Hi, Angel. Hi, Kativa. Hello, Mr. Patrick. Hi, Casey. How are you doing? Camera is framed a little bit high. Okay, well, I mean, I can bump that up. It didn't look like it. I mean, but I'm not really worried so much about what I look like on here, contrary to what some people might think. So, yeah, I definitely want to dive into this for you guys, and just make sure that you guys understand a handful of things here, right? What it truly means, what each of these numbers mean, and how they can look different. One of the biggest things I do want to drive home here, and this is kind of a controversial thing amongst a lot of people, like they just aren't grasping it. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And we're going to rock and roll from here. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit so everybody can see this. What I want you guys to understand, this has been simplified, okay? We utilize this in the acquisitions process. We utilize this in the recon process. We utilize this in the dispositions process. If I'm running numbers to see if I'm going to be interested in a fix and flip myself, I utilize this calculator. I want you guys to know that. Like, I'm not just throwing stuff out there for you guys that does not work. I want you guys to also understand that this is built out to work in any market for any property, okay? So the big thing that people tend to want to ask, and I have honestly thought about completely removing this, is what profit percentage do buyers want to buy at, okay? That looks different, you guys. That looks different for every market. That looks different for every price point in every market. That looks different for every buyer. This is not something that we typically utilize on our team unless we are talking to an end buyer. Okay, so I want you to understand that, and I want you to understand why. What is vitally important to an end buyer is the juice worth the squeeze? Okay, so keep that in mind, because I'm probably going to say it like 4 more times during this live. Keep that in mind. That's what's important to your end buyer. So where do end buyers buy? So you guys have gone, you've taken all the things I've ever recorded to teach you how to comp like a true wizard, like a true queen, maybe even a comp queen, right? You guys have gone through and you're excellent at comping properties, right? So I'm not going to get into comping properties. I'm just going to go ahead and say, you understand what the ARV of the property is. Now, there's a note here because I put it here because people tend to fail to recall that your ARV is determined not just by comps, okay? If you put $20,000 into a property and you put $40,000 into a property, they're not worth the same value at the end. And if they are, you probably should have put 20 instead of the 40, right? If it, like, you have to remember that. Like, they're as is comps, you put 20 into it, it's worth X amount. It's not worth just that highest price that you can justify. And if it is, you have to make your property look like that property, which means you're probably going to need more rehab, and your rehab numbers are low, and it's not going to work out for your end buyer, right? This is the way that your end buyer thinks. They think, well, if I'm going to get this property marketable at this price point and it's going to sell on the market, then I have to put X amount of dollars in it, right? So your rehab costs that are associated with coming up with the number where your end buyer is going to buy is vitally important here, right? So we have these specific aqua colored boxes on here because I created this. So that is what you have to fill out, right? Like, that's the entire point, for you to not have to fill out an entire box or entire spreadsheet full of boxes just to come up with the same rough number. You guys also have to understand every person's rehab budget is going to come back a little bit different, even if they send 3 contractors out there. Everybody, like, less so than like ARV 9 times out of 10. So sometimes when you're talking to an end buyer, you know, you might say the ARV is 190 and they might say it's 170, and you can literally say the words to them, okay, like, I do see comps for 170, but then in order to get this property there, you should really be able to lower that rehab amount, right? So you can adjust the numbers to where they shake out the same. And I'll show you a couple examples of that as well. The contract price to the seller, like, a lot of people struggle with this. If you follow the closer's formula, the first thing that I do is I just put in their asking price, right? So, and then you put in your wholesale fee. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through a couple of examples here, right? We're going to use really round numbers, and really common numbers, so that it's easier for you guys to understand, right? So we're just going to go ahead and do a $200,000 ARV. That's what you've determined the ARV is. Once you put $35,000 into this subject property, and the seller's asking price is $75,000. Just so you guys know, I'm coming up with these numbers off the top of my head, right? And for a $75,000 contract, you're like, I'm going to at least go ahead and put $7,000 in there for myself. Well, if that's the case, you got all kinds of spread right there, right? So while we're on the phone, I'm popping these numbers in all day, every day. And you're like, wow, that's a huge profit percentage, or that's a huge profit potential right there, right? It's a huge profit percentage too. So if a seller gave me these numbers on the phone with them, the first thing I am going to do is I'm going to verify that my comps are correct, because I just pulled them very quickly. So there's layers to the pulling of the comps. These numbers don't seem super likely if a seller is giving you that asking price. So one thing is probably off. Either you are high on this number or you're low on this number, right? Now, it does happen, but I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, maybe you realize that you're digging into the comps while they're talking and they're telling you more and more and more about what this property needs. And you're like, you know, I feel like definitely I was looking at some comps that are a neighborhood over. Really, these closest ones, I should be at 175. So this is literally how I utilize this while I'm on a call, you guys. So I'm not aiming to have like this perfect thing come up, right? I'm digging in layer by layer by layer. If you've attended the closer's formula, you understand by doing the comp and underwriting relay race that this is exactly how I encourage you guys to do it. This is how we actually apply it. This is how we actually implement it. So then say the seller says, well, yeah, I said it was outdated, but also it needs, a new roof. The air conditioning is, they're just telling you information. The air conditioning is 25 years old, but it heats, blah, 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 blah. So you bump this up to 50,000, right? Because they're telling you more and more about the property. Well, all of a sudden, $75,000 isn't looking so good because while everybody wants to ask me, Cassie, what profit percentage do end buyers want to buy at? Have I bought properties and profited very well at a 12.57 profit percentage rate? Absolutely. Would I buy this property and do this remodel for this profit percentage? Absolutely not. So why I want you guys to understand that the important number that you need to be looking at is profit potential. Okay. You need to be looking at that potential profit. And sometimes people even goof this up, right? Because they don't get that repair number right. They don't get that rehab right. They were way too low. They kept it at the 35,000. A lot of times people will do this because they don't want to be experts. They want to let their end buyers tell them. And while that worked, even for us, for a certain period of time, I will tell you guys that you need to educate yourself. You need to get your reps in. You need to continue to understand this information on a deep level, because if you do this, your deals will sell and you won't be running into issues where you just locked up a contract just to lock it up and you end up having to terminate on the seller. We get so many of these deals sent to us weekly, probably from some of y'all watching. If if I have a good guess, that's probably many of you watching. If you're sending in a deal to us and that gets bumped back, it's because nobody is flipping a $50,000 rehab for a $22,000 in profit. Okay. Now, that being said, a lot of times I want to have this much room in here and I am wanting the repairs to match up fairly closely to the profit potential. If I were doing $15,000 in repairs and able to make 30,000, that's kind of more like a wholesale. I would do that. If I'm doing, very minimal, yeah, I'll go lower. But 9 times out of 10, I am not going to even consider doing an actual even cosmetic rehab in a property unless it is just so clean, which it never is. So clean. Like I'll do paint and carpet for 30,000 maybe in the right market if I don't have high days on market and I'm like helping a seller because they have to close quickly. Like those are typically where those properties come about, right? But this is not a project I'm willing to take on. $50,000 in repairs to make 20 grand ever. In fact, I normally won't look at, and a lot of end buyers are not going to look at a flip and make less than 35 grand for any size house for any market. There's too much risk involved. The juice is not worth the squeeze, right? People that might be in the market to buy and hold might take that on. But even myself, I don't prefer to have to do an entire remodel to then turn around and rent it out to somebody who's probably going to break stuff, like I don't think that's fun. I'm picky about my buy and holds. We do teach people to go ahead and include for a certain amount of holding costs and closing costs. The way that it's calculated on here, instead of getting super complicated, I normally don't change it from 7 and 5 because it's based off of the ARV, right? I'm typically going to, move that up if I change it at all, or if I'm comping, or if I'm underwriting for a buy and hold where the rent rate is really solid and really strong, I'll change that usually to 1 and 1. So that's just because you have to pay title insurance and you might have a little bit of holding costs. And I do typically leave that in there even if it's already tenanted out. Just because you're basically making sure you're watching those numbers, you're watching that bottom line, and you're getting a property where not just one needle in a haystack end buyer will buy, but you're wanting to get a property that's going to be attractive to end buyers. Okay. You do not want to get into a situation where you're looking for the one crazy person, right? Like you don't want to be that person. So with all of that being said, where would you need to be at here? I'm on the phone with a seller again. It looks like I need to be like a $21,000 difference. So I'm just going to pop in a number right there, right? You could probably get them to 54, 55, whatever. You're going to probably have to lower your wholesale fee. But I want you guys to understand, like, because people will be adamantly like, it's always it's always like extremes, right? Like people are like, completely ignore this, or they completely like are way too over the top about it, right? There is as my darling Nick Robbins would say, there's an art and a science to comping and underwriting. Okay, so you can take this to multiple lenders and you'll probably get like a different number back, right? But like if you're in range, it's gonna be good. You know what I'm saying? You're taking to multiple contractors. You might have one that comes back at 46. You might have one that comes back at 52. You might get a BPO and they might say, if you put $50,000 into this, you 1,000% can get 190 all day long, right? You could bump that right on up. You might be able to go ahead and offer them 60,000. You have to understand that if you send me this deal, I'm not going to throw this back at you as an end buyer, as a JV partner, as an agent, as an anyone, I'm not going to throw this back at you if you're, selling to me at 70 or 75. I'm not going to throw it back at you if you are sending it out to me at 68. You see what I'm saying? It's not about this profit percentage. Now, that is a fat profit percentage, right? Like a huge fat profit percentage. That's also a really good deal. Like that would fly off the market, right? Now, sometimes what you'll hear us say is like the seller's coming in at 75 and we might be on the phone with that seller and we might say, okay, well, Mr. Mrs. Seller, the number I'm actually coming up with that makes me feel very comfortable based on our conversation is actually at 60, but I'm pretty sure that I will actually be able to squeeze out 65, but I'm not going to be able to meet you at 75. If we can do 65, can we make that work today? And that's like kind of where you'll hear that, right? So if they're like, absolutely not, I can do 70 though. Well, am I going to lock that deal up right then and there? Absolutely. And I want you guys to understand why. Okay. So 70 would be that contract price to the seller. Okay. Well, you might say, Cassie, that's just maybe a little bit too far apart, right? Well, what if I have a contractor that can do this for 47,000? What if I got a great deal on an HVAC system? What if I happen to have been using the same roofing crew for like 15 years? Because that's me. What if I know where to get really good prices on roofing materials? Because that's me. What if I'm an agent and I can save on some of those closing costs? Well, that's me. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not looking to lock a deal up so slim that you're looking for the buyer that has all of those things that they can do. You're looking to see if these are the numbers. Is your buyer's pool super narrow, or do they even exist? Well, if you're at $20,000 potential profit and $47,000 in rehab, I can promise you nobody's buying that. If you're here, look, I mean, don't shake a stick at it. I think people will buy that, right? Notice I changed the ARV because me as a buyer, I want to aim when I'm purchasing, I want to aim for a more conservative list price, right? If it's going to take me 3 months and I could justify comps at 180 and 195, I'm going to probably go somewhere in the middle of that. I'm not going to be aiming to list this property for 195 because 2 properties ever in my neighborhood that match this sold at 195 from 196. If I have 5 comps that tell me I'm going to be between 185 and 189, I'm probably going to list at 187, So that's what I'm going to project for. So I want you guys to understand that this is an art. This is a projection of where your end buyers are going to need to buy, right? So you are projecting this web out there, and you have to make sure that you have this as attractive for your end buyers. So if you've solidified that those comps, if you put $47,000 into this, are going to be 185, and you feel confident in that, which I understand, like we've done this so many hundreds of thousands of times probably over the past decade that, like we can do that in 10 seconds, right? Well, 10 seconds might be a bit of an exaggeration, but at the end of the day, I say this to sellers all of the time. I want to go ahead and give you that 70. I just feel like I'm going to be at 60. Like, there's no way I'm getting over 68, right? And I feel like I'm going to hit you back at 68 in, 7 to 10 days after we've done, got the title work open, after we've done this, after we've done that. Are you going to be okay with that? If I do. And I set that precedence because, well, what if we're underestimating this? What if we can squeeze another couple grand here? We can squeeze here. We can squeeze here, right? Like, you can shift the numbers by a couple $1,000s and still be in that range. So I want you guys to understand that that is what you're looking for. You're looking for a projection. Is the juice going to be worth the squeeze? You don't want to be having your ARV be 200,000 if you're comping properties that are, 45 years newer than this, but your property is, and all the properties that are the same build year are literally, coming in at 185. Like, you don't want to make that mistake when you're comping, right? You also don't want to make that mistake and trying to put $30,000 in repairs. You also don't want to make that mistake and be like $15,000 off to your seller. Or another thing that I see a lot of people do wrong is, like, they will lock a property up at $40,000 and put a $30,000 wholesale fee on it because that's where they would like to sell it at. And all of the as-is comps are way lower. They're like what they locked it up at. It's just not that lucrative of a deal, or they aren't. Uh, this is more often than not what it is. The people that send those deals over to us never put a rehab number. They just send photos, and it's like the whole thing inside and out is just a shit box. So like people do that all of the time. And look, guys, I hate to say this. You can do what you want with your life. But if you're going to do things the way that titanium does them, and you're going to be wanting to streamline your process, your success, you need to understand these things. You need to not be saying, well, the ARV is 200,000 and I have this locked up at 20,000 and I would like to move it at 70,000. Like, come on. Like, come on. I mean, look, I love grand slams too, but I'm not swinging for one every at bat. Like, that's not how you have a good batting average. Sorry, but it's just not. And if you want to truly understand this business, then you really need to understand, like, that end buyer doesn't care how much your fee is. They care how much their purchase price is. Now, I say all of that. There are buyers out there who find out what your wholesale fee is and they're just like jerks about it. And like they shouldn't care because if they make, whatever. It's not the point. Not the point at all. The point is that end buyers care about their profit potential. Is the juice worth the squeeze? I would absolutely do this still all day long, right? So I'm going to answer a couple questions and then I'm going to go through another example of a really low profit percentage, right? That is a deal that I would do. Probably same as this. So if it's a really light rehab, Casey, if it's a really light rehab, will you bring the holding cost down at all? No. I don't. I mean, I don't. At the end of the day, like having $9,000 as your holding cost, say your holding costs end up on this property only being like, say they end up being like 12,000, but your rehab ends up being 45,000. It all shakes out the same. If it's like a super light rehab, let's just pop some numbers in, right? Well, let's just say it's a $20,000 rehab and your contract price to your seller is 75,000 again. Let's just do that. So let's just say, yeah, that actually works. So, whoops a daisies. So in this scenario, like it being a light rehab, okay, like I have at least 3-4 months of insurance. I have, getting the lawn mowed, getting it list ready, getting it cleaned up, repairs on the end. Like light rehabs, what's funny about this, Casey, and one of the reasons I don't, in truth, is because the light rehab, something's always missed. They want you to fix some crap in the attic. They want you to fix the soil level around the foundation. It's just always something. Where that rehab actually ends up being like 25,000 on the inspection. Like it never fails. And then all of a sudden, I'm just like, no, I'm not messing with the holding costs. Because even if my holding costs are like $5,000, like I want to make more than $25,000 to flip a stinking house. Like it's one of the reasons like I don't like to look at it under 35 is because one thing happens and the numbers can shift like by $5,000. And then the next thing you know, like I'm frustrated that I spent, the time and effort to fix and flip that house and deal with that house for 4 months to make 25 grand. You know what I mean? Typically if it's a light rehab, I'm wanting to make somewhere more like at the 35,000 mark. to be honest with you. So good rule of thumb is 20% profit margin is a good target. Sydney, you're not listening. That's absolutely incorrect. I don't mean to yell at you. I always tell people, because people want to ask this, the range is 8 to 24% usually. It is property dependent. It is absolutely property dependent. And you're not aiming for that on acquisitions. The only time we ever talk about that profit percentage is when we're on dispositions. Because some buyers, it's like this, 24% return. That just pushes them over the edge, right? Certain end buyers don't care about that. Certain end buyers, that is like a good line for them. And typically the way we use that is, well, if you get this listed at $150,000, you put 25 into it. That's easy. You've got, what is that? 18,000 set aside for closing and holding costs. In my calculations, if you were to purchase this at 82.5, and you have a 16% profit percentage, over 16%. If everything goes according to plan, that's what we're looking at here. So I don't understand how this is not a super attractive deal to you. That's the only time we talk about that number ever in our business. And people want to ask that question that you're asking all of the time, because they want to calculate whether they've locked this up right based on that number. And I'm telling you, that's not a good way to look at it. People screw up by thinking that. And here's why, right? Some people will say they like to have, they like to aim for, their buyers to have a 15% or higher profit percentage, right? And let's just go ahead and talk about the way percentages work, okay? That's not a deal I'm doing. Still not a deal I'm doing. Oops, I went the wrong direction. Which direction do I have to go? Yeah, I thought so. There's a 15%. I'm not doing that deal. That's why when you're doing acquisitions, that number does not matter, at least not on this calculator. If you were to do every little nook and cranny number and fill out a property spreadsheet for calculations that had 50 boxes in it, sure, you can pay a lot more attention to that number. I'm not paying attention to that number because I'm casting a web. I'm not being a sniper on what the end buyer's exact numbers are going to be, because it's going to be different for every end buyer depending on what they do with the property. Like, is it fair to say that if somebody comes in there and they think they can get this rehab done for $25,000, that the property is going to sell for $175,000? Absolutely not. Therefore, is their profit percentage going to be correct? Absolutely not. Right? So it's also fair to say that, like, this is not a number you should be aiming for. It should be this number that you're aiming for, because this isn't an accurate indicator of where your end buyer is going to buy this at. They're going to buy this way like $35,000 or more, probably way closer to 40 on this deal. I hope that makes sense. And I hope people say, like, whenever I talk to people like RJ does, it comes across different. And he would be like, Sydney, you're not listening. And people wouldn't be offended. But then they would if I said it. So I hope you're not offended that I'm like, Sydney, you're not listening. But I mean that with all the love in my heart. Because, and I love that you asked the question, to be honest with you, because everybody wants to do that. And I keep trying to tell people, like, don't look at that. I know that is in your head. You want to simplify it. So the way that I always simplify it is, for the most part, nationwide, you want to be looking at, is the juice worth the squeeze? And that means, are the repairs and the profit potential similar? I will do a $60,000 flip and be okay with making $48,000 on it, but I will not be okay with making $38,000 on it, right? And so no matter what the ARV is, the rehab, the contract price, to the buyer right there, no matter what that is, what's important to me is my flip going to return an amount of profit that I'm willing to spend this amount of time flipping, the risk is worth it, etc. So I hope that makes a lot more sense, because your profit percentage can really vary. Like, I've literally bought properties and made a great return, and the profit percentage was like 8%. And it's going to change depending on the price point that you're in, and the amount of work the property needs and the market you're in, and so on and so forth. And so this is also what I hate about the ARV percentage of the 70% or 75% model. It's based on a percentage that drastically changes according to each specific property and each purchase price range and each rehab amount change, right? And so this is why I started teaching people to pay a lot more attention to if your buyer is willing to do a $100,000 remodel to make 35 grand, they're not going to do it. So don't lock properties up like that. So people usually struggle when the rehab cost is high and the ARV is lower. The two situations where people really tend to kind of screw this up and lock deals up to sellers way too high. And part of that's because they're utilizing that ARV model because they want a quick number, because they haven't studied this in the way that I'm like kind of going through it with you guys now. They aren't looking at it from the eyes of where that end buyer is going to be. Or maybe they were in crazy. Maybe they started, this is a really good example. Maybe they started in times where like people were buying at crazy high numbers, right? To be honest with you, that set a bad precedence for a lot of people. And like, my two least favorite questions that I get from people regarding this are, so like, I had a buyer like 2 weeks ago that bought at 85% of the ARV. First and foremost, like, it's not like, when somebody tells you that, are you going to go lock everything up at 85% of the ARV? What if they didn't include, what if like you're not including repairs and they are? What if, that was just like a crazy buyer and like they didn't understand the exit strategy? Or what if it was, some magnificent this, that, or the other, or it was a wholesaler, or it was a this, or it was a that? Like, you're needing to understand these numbers at the end of the day, no matter what. Trying to slap on a blanket percentage like that, it just doesn't work. Sometimes you can be at 65% of the ARV and it's still not going to work. So the reason that this is created to be this way, and this is applicable, is like, we really are nationwide. And this works in all the markets, on all the properties. You have 4 boxes that you need to figure out how to get really good at filling out. ARV, repairs, getting in that contract price to the seller correctly. So all of that to be said, I'm going to go on right on down the line. I hope that answered your question. For a closing fee, is it consistently at 7%? It is, because your first set of closing fees are going to be like cheaper. They're not going to be run off of ARV. I always just leave it at 7% because it works. It's round numbers. These aren't like, if you actually ran the numbers on, what is 1%, like, every title company is not the same. It's just not calculated to like perfection for a reason. It's supposed to be a round number. It is. At the end of the day, is it going to be their exact number? No. It's going to cover their stuff though. And this is one of the reasons I leave 7 and 5, because this covers you nationwide. Every now and then Sure, if it's really something you want to be really precise on, you can put 7.5%. You could put 5.5% or 4.5%, but like you're on the phone with the seller. This is where this is being utilized. I am not trying to crunch numbers until the end of time when I'm on the phone with the seller. I'm wanting to see if we are on the same page. Again, guys, there's layers to this. Your end buyer knows what their closing costs are. They know what their holding costs are. Like you're not looking to get this down to a penny. So I don't know if you still have that question, but I'm just going to answer it for anybody who might be joining later. When you determine holding costs, do you look at how long properties in the area they are fully rehabbed, that's sold on the market, how long they were on the market before sold? Okay, look. Typically speaking, in a nationwide situation, I look at that when I'm comping. I am more conservative on my comps in that number, not this calculator. The reason for that is because that property is going to be more rural and you're going to need to be more conservative on the contract price to the seller for that reason. That just is what it is at the end of the day. So those are typically the two places that I address the longevity of days on market. Why? Because that's an indicator you're going to have a much smaller buyer's pool. And so you just need to get in there a little bit deeper. And usually in situations like that, they're not all high days on market. So again, your days on market can just really vary. Like we have, a property that's listed that has really high days on market right now. And that's just because of new construction around it, right? Like we're going to have to deal with a different kind of exit strategy on it. And it's fine, but it's a fantastic property. And when we purchased it, it was a wholesale, and it is in essence, really low days on market, just really poor timing. So it happens, right? Fortunately, our holding costs are really low on that. So we're good for that reason. And you just, for me, I just tend to be more conservative on that ARV as well as the contract price to the seller, because and the wholesale fee. Look, I just went over this with my team the other day, one of our team members, and I told them, I was like, every time we get a property in this market in Indiana, we move it, but I can assure you that you think that deal is way, way, way fatter than it is. Because the buyers in that market, they just are what they are. It's a tier 3 kind of market, but people buy and hold and fix and flip there consistently. It's not that far outside of a major city. And I actually love wholesaling deals there. It's easy peasy, bo breezy. But, even my team, who's been taught this, probably had this hammered in their heads for more than they cared have heard it. Yeah, they're just, they're just having to realize the spread on that is not you don't get to market that out for that huge wholesale fee that you think you're about to. It's not going to work, So yeah, I just usually address it in the contract price and the ARV versus bumping that up by a certain percentage if days on market are over 90 or something like that. And if the ARV is 350, the closing cost will still, yes, sure will. You gotta pay realtors and title fees. Yes, also the holding costs. How can we get a copy of this calculator, Facebook user? You can email the email. Let me see if I can do this. I think it'll show up as RJ, but it's me. You can email this email and request, and you'll have somebody send you back the options. Okay. Let me keep going down. Eric. This calculator is the real deal. Using this on all my deals has been a game changer on the phone. Eric, you're going to give me goosebumps. This is why I built it. This is why I do this. This is why I'm going live. So look, I could be spending my time doing certain things, but like I'm here, I'm putting this out there. I want you guys to be successful. I want more people to be putting content out there that really like makes a difference for people. I've been called to be doing a lot more content like this for a very long time. So it really means the world, Eric, for you to share that, because it helps you walk through your numbers and makes the seller a lot more confident in you. Like, oh, facts, 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 facts. Thanks for actually pointing something out I wouldn't have thought to bring up, Eric. You're just double whammy right there, aren't you? Look, I mean, it does. It because you sound like, the buyer. You don't have to, guys, you don't have to go through all the crazy things RJ and I went through. If you saw our podcast, or if you, what was it? What else did we do? A couple weeks ago, like we did a podcast together, and then we also went live in this group when we released Titanium University last week. I think both of those were released last week, actually. Guys, if you paid attention to either of those, if you did or didn't, I hope you do. But obviously we create all content and hope you guys are just eating it up and it's making a difference for you or whatever. So if you didn't listen to those, I'm just letting you know, like we went through a lot of really huge successes and a lot of really big flops, a lot of failures to come up with these things. To land in this place, and that's why we're sharing it with you. You don't have to flip hundreds of properties to be able to sound like somebody that has flipped hundreds of properties. I created a tool so you could sound like that and then not be stuck on the phone for 8 hours with a seller in order to sound like that. That's actually really off-putting to sellers when you try to educate them to be a house flipper. That's your job, not theirs. La, la, la. I digress. Great content, Cassie. I got to get your profit calculator already. I'm just saying, it's a game changer. I've been told by so many people I should put a patent on it. Yes, yes, yes. In God we trust. To answer your question, I think you're like the third person. Closing costs is always 7 to 8%. Title transaction attorney is 2%. Putting in the market is 5 to 6. Yo soy Alberto. Not exactly. Closing costs should not be 7 to 8% if you're separating out 2% for the attorney. Putting it on the market is 5 to 6 with a pro agent. Yeah, I don't know where you're getting those numbers from, but 7 to 8% for the title is extremely high and something I've never experienced. So that's not exactly accurate. And like I said, this isn't broken down from, an exact standpoint. The closing costs are for agents and a couple of title insurances. Yeah, sometimes it'll be a little bit more than that 7%, but it's because it's the way it's calculated in the background, and it's just to give a round number. It's not, just like your holding costs, it's not 1,000% calculating, how much your lawnmower guy that you hire is going to be, or how much your insurance is going to cost, or anything like that. It's a good round number for, again, each buyer those numbers are going to be a little bit different for them. So, It also depends on how you close, cash, hard money, kind of loan you're getting, etc. Nope. It's CASSI. You should know that by now. How do you make adjustments so fast in your head while on the phone? H. Matthews. I think that is Hazel, if I'm not mistaken. I don't make them in my head. I use this. I literally just do what I just did on the phone with a seller. I'm like, oh, am I too high? Am I too low? I just adjust it while I'm on the phone with the seller. I don't make them in my head. In fact, the last thing I'm doing is making them in my head. RJ, that's a different story. He does do things in his head much more often when it comes to math. I'm the kind of person, like, I write my math down. So instead of writing it down, I just built a calculator. And I just adjust it and tweak it and whatever. So like in this example right here, so I've just determined it's this and this. Well, this isn't going to work. So I'm going to have to be at least at 70. I mean, I did $10,000 math in my head. I think that could work. I mean, that's about all the extent of the math I do in my head. Calculator cuts down the underwriting time substantially while I'm on the phone. Thank you, Cassie. Thank you, sir. Closer's formula, attendee himself. It does. I mean to tell you, that was like the whole point for it. You're welcome, my darling. I don't know what you're laughing at, James. I must have said something funny. Was it me telling people I don't math in my head? Anyhow, yeah, a bazillion years ago, I used to have a different calculator. I will tell you guys, like, what's even crazier about this. You're gonna like hate me. Before we really started doing like the closers formula, I did a thing. Okay. And you're going to laugh, but I don't teach people this. I won't even keep it on mine. But every now and then I'll be live and somebody will peep it and they'll be like, oh, what is that? Right. So originally when I created this, I had a little, offer calculator, and it had like this. Some of you old school, like Crucible attendees, some of you Titans will know this because you have this version of it from like 3 years ago. But I used to have that little offer calculator up at the top so I could put in the ARV and do like 70% and put in the repairs. So I could just get like a really quick, rough estimate of where I would need to be for this before I saw what the profit potential would be, because I wanted that quick math of it. But I wasn't really personally implementing as hardcore as I should have at that time, the closers formula. And once I implemented that, it was like a really huge, I was like, I've never touched that calculator since. So it's been like 3 years, well, probably more than 3 years. We didn't call it necessarily the closers formula back then, but like we were adjusting the way that we do acquisitions and so on and so forth. Like, probably goes back to like RJ's first belt that he got, or maybe it was not the first belt, the first time he competed in the Closers Olympics. Actually, there's funny, like if you've attended a closers formula, there's like a slide that we have on there is of me sitting on my couch and locking up a deal after that Closers Olympics. Like the next day in under 13 minutes, I had a signed contract. And like, because that Closers Olympics fired me up because I was like, dude, like I could totally win the Closers Olympics. I was like so fired up. I was like, watch this. Hold my beer. I don't actually drink beer, but I will every now and then. But like, I don't drink beer while I'm working, or very rarely do I drink beer. And I was like, hold my beer. And I was like, watch me get this done. I just called this seller, right? And then so from there, it was just kind of one of those things where I just started implementing more of those things that RJ does that like I didn't naturally do. These are so effective. I tend to be like a little bit more of like a nurturing kind of person. Like people tend to open up to me a little bit more and want to talk more about their problems, like their personal problems, because I'm female on the phone. So sometimes I do get stuck on those calls. And it's a little bit unavoidable. People kind of tend to want to make me like a little bit more of their counselor. And also just because I can't help it. Like I do have that in my true nature. So I being something I always used to say is like being an expert in your field, being a master of your craft will help you overcome things way more than you know. When people can trust you to be that expert and to be that master of your craft, they can hear it. And this goes back to what Eric was saying. There's just so many other layers of this calculator that make all the difference in the world. We use this on dispositions, and it makes all the difference in the world. And like for me, this did help me in like reining people back in, even when they want to talk to me for forever and ever, amen. I truly would kind of bring it back to the numbers, even if I say it in a little bit of a different way than RJ does. I might say, like I say it with more like flair, I guess, more tonality. And it works. It wouldn't work for RJ. He would sound so disingenuous if he spoke like I spoke. I'm so much more animated than he is in most situations. But then there's situations like you get RJ in and he's like so much more animated than me. Like I call him drama. But then sometimes it's the complete opposite. But when it comes to like seller calls, or even buyer calls, buyer calls, I will say I am so much more straightforward on. But seller calls, I can tend to have like a little bit more empathy in my voice just because it's just so natural. And RJ, like when he is being empathetic, like he sounds, it's genuine, but the reason it's genuine is for a different genuine sounding is for a different reason than it is when I'm talking. I'm just a more animated talker for the most part on an all day, everyday basis. Where do we get the calculator? So it's up in this email, RJ Bates III at titanium.investment. So you can copy and paste that, or it's at the bottom of the screen right now. I was referring to the ARV adjustment comparing repairs to potential profit. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. The ARV adjustment. I'm honestly, darling, not going to get into that so much on this live. I definitely pull those comps up. It's just all done on my comping tool. If I'm going to be honest with you, I will say this, as my lovely partners like to remind me, it is, I feel like I should have some kind of like award. Not that I need it, but just because I want people to understand, like, it is the most complicated thing that we do to teach others. And God knows I love it when somebody just picks up comping like that. But Lord knows it is one of the hardest things to teach. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of reps. And the easiest way that I can tell you, Hazel, is like, which I do think it is Hazel, but your YouTube thing says H. If you're from the vault, I think it's you. If it's not, then I apologize. But H. Matthews, I'm referring to you. The best way that I can put it is that I do it in layers, and thank God I have fantastic people on my team. I have the best partner in the whole world, who understands my crazy brain and has like a natural talent for like picking things out that take me 10 sentences to say and putting them into one sentence so that it's easier for me to teach us. And of course, I end up being the person that is inherently good at teaching this stuff. But sometimes it's just really hard to say. And then I have Nick. Nick said, yeah, explaining to them that this comes in layers. Like when I'm processing comps and adjusting those ARVs, it's done in layers. My first layer is like I'm looking at that broader market. I'm looking at, within that set of comps, if you watch the comp video or taken any of the comp training, which is like, I'm going to spend 8 years, I swear, like just dumping comp videos into there and like all these. I'm going to just start having to record everything I ever comp and just stick it in the Titanium University or something. Like I've thought about that and just like titling it like this one's rural Alabama, this one's rural Alaska, this one is agricultural, this is mobile homes, like this is this, because I get these questions all the time and it's so funny. Like one of Haven, I'm so sorry, my love. There's a Hazel and a Haven. I'm so sorry. I'm terrible with names. There is a Hazel though. I just think I swapped your last names. Anyways, so I feel like it's layers, okay? And that first layer is like looking for the consistent data. And then I just kind of shave away at it, right? So that first number that I put in is like the consistent data of like the 6 closest comps. And then I just start looking at some more and more and more of those details. I do think that you have taken, I think you got the titanium profits, if I'm not mistaken. The Lord knows, I just mixed up your last name. So I guess that's the easiest way for me to answer that question. That's how I do it quickly. And I very much, if you go back and watch the beginning of this, or if you don't remember, when I changed the numbers, I started it at 200 and then I'm like, oh man, yeah, actually like this is 1980 and like all these are 2021 or whatever, I need to like filter out my comps, I just do it in layers. And I just plug the numbers in, and that's one of the reasons like we need to get that closures formula. Like, what are you asking for the property? Like we go straight to it, and then we start shaking out the numbers. Another way to say it, and like nobody's ever said it to me in this way before, it's like, think about what you do when you're like a kid and like you have a sandbox that has like, it's under an acorn tree and you're cleaning out the sandbox, or you're at the beach and you're looking for seashells, or you're digging for gold in the river, whatever, those like little sifting trays that you had like with your sandbox toys. So like when you go in and you punch in the numbers in the profit calculator, or you go in and you're comping, like these are so similar. You're digging in with that big old scoop and you're getting all the sand that you can fit in that sucker and from that corner into that sifter, right? And then you got to shake it out. Like, you know what I'm saying? You got to shake out the numbers. And eventually you're left with gold or seashells or acorns in some cases, or just clean sand. So yeah, like I just start looking for that consistent data, looking for the average, that 3 to 6 comps. And then I start digging into the details and adjusting it to make sure. And I talked to the sellers about that, very much so. I had potentially thought about calling some live sellers, but I don't think I'm going to do it because I've already gone over an hour. And I really didn't think that this was going to be something that took me this long to break down and talk about. And I do kind of actually for a couple of people, if you're still on here and like you want to kind of see what I do whenever it's a buy and hold, then just shoot me. Make sure you like the video, first of all. Make sure you type in an emoji that's not a middle finger, and I'll get the message that you guys want me to stay on and do that a little bit. And I am going live comping too, Haven, tomorrow with Benson from PropStream. So I can get a little bit more into that topic, and I kind of want to like leave it there. So hopefully tomorrow you're available. And you can also go back and look at, I have a really good comp video in here. Obviously, in the Titanium Profits product, I have some really good comp videos. And then university, I'm going to have a bajillion comp videos, forever and ever, amen, as I like to say. I will comp for you guys probably as long as I am involved in this business that we have built, which I got no plans on going anywhere soon. Only 2 people. I don't know. I think I need at least like, I expected a lot more, to be honest with you. Sydney, thank you. I'm really glad. I was hoping Casey Opal was on here, man. I wish you were still here, Casey. Don't forget to like this. That's right, Angel, my guy, always having our back. Adrian, thank you. Okay, well, I guess I'll just do it for y'all and for all the people who end up watching in the future. Hopefully, Casey will come back to this. Okay, so you guys have a quick buy and hold, and how do I utilize? This is one of the things I actually added on to the. There we go, Facebook user Jamie or Jaime. Look, I added this on. I want you guys to all know, confessional. I used to want to rip my hair out when oh, Casey, there you are, my friend. I wanted to make sure that you were here for like and paying attention to at least this part. Casey's the Closers Formula attendee. I actually think he is one of the first class on, maybe he's first class on Titanium University. I'm not sure. I don't know if I remember that wrong. You have them all. I appreciate you. Thank you for taking this time. You're welcome, my darling. And I hope that it just helps you keep getting those reps in, and getting those numbers tightened up and getting your language down and all of that stuff. Look, guys, I've tried to create a way to like get you there overnight. If it helps you feel more confident and comfortable, most people don't get this the first like right out of the gates. So don't feel like, you know, it just takes practice and it takes understanding these terms. That's why I can go live about this so often, and it's just still add value. This is why we teach such deep levels to this in different ways, because it's a lot. It's one of the more complicated things to teach. So as much as I want to simplify it. Okay, so my darlings, on to buy and holds. Where does everybody always screw up, especially on the profit calculator? Really, it's not about the profit calculator. It's about the web. It's about the web. Where do the end buyers buy? So people always want to like run numbers for fix and flip and be like, okay, all right. So the ARV is 175 and the rehab is $40,000, and the seller wants 80, right? And in this scenario, a buyer is not going to do probably this $40,000 rehab for $26,000. Okay. And I see this getting marketed like this all the time, and it drives me absolutely bananas. Okay. And they say the words, but you can just put $15,000 into it and it will make a good buy and hold, right? Because people will rent it at that point, and they will even rent it for, say, you know, $1,100 is the rent rate in that area. And that's a 1% rental. If you put $40,000 into the property, it makes it worth $175,000. If you put $15,000 in the property, it don't make it worth $175,000. That's just the way it is. This is what people forget and fail to understand. And I see people marketing stuff like that all of the stinking time, right? So you might still get an appraisal if you do the BRRRR method at like 175, to be honest with you. That does not mean you can go list that property as a separate exit strategy. So if you really want to know what that, like, if you really want to be the person that understands, you know, like what you're talking about, make sure you run that correctly. Well, this is the number one place that people really screw up. So say like you put, whatever, I'm just making stuff up here. Make sure if like you market this out and like you want to talk about like this on a level, I swear if I ever saw anybody market it like as a buy and hold, you could put 15 in it. It would probably go and sell on the market for 155 at that point. But if you flip it, it'd be worth, and put 40 into it, it'd be worth 175. Like I would just fall out. I would fall out to see people doing this correctly. Anyways, guys, so I had to simplify this, right? Now, one of the more complicated things that you have to deal with is you have to understand if a property will cash flow. Okay, there's not a super simple. I used to rip my hair out trying to understand where end buyers buy for buy and hold, and I couldn't simplify it. So I did try to simplify it in certain ways. So say you have 3 levels of markets for the most part in the nation. We'll call them the Section 8 areas. They typically want, in most locations in the country, this rent percentage on this calculator to be somewhere between 2 and 3. 2.5 will usually work. Okay. There's a lot of markets like people will not mess with some of the scarier, higher crime areas. That's definitely needing to look at like a 3%, right? Now, if there's kind of like that middle ground market where it's like between 1 and 2%, and then there's markets that are like super hot, like 1% rentals are fine. So a lot of people also want to sit there and be like, it's the 1% rule, right? Now, if you don't understand what kind of market you're in, like DFW, 1 to 1.25% for the most part. If you have your other numbers right, this will work. Now, I also want you guys to understand most of the time, like, this is not going to be the case where it works better as a buy and hold, like where you can offer like a ton more to the seller. And part of the reason for that is like, and it used to kind of be the case like 3 or so 4 years ago. Now, like with interest 4 years ago, I'll say less. If you know, you know. When interest rates started going up, they went up for buy and hold investors too. So new loans like that, they've had to get tighter. The reason why is because most buy and hold investors, they want a little bit of equity in the property. Okay. So I always want to run the numbers. Excuse me. My nose tickles. Somebody must be thinking about me. Maybe 40 some odd people are thinking about me. Then typically run my numbers like this, okay? Because I do want that equity. So the way we always teach, I don't even remember what I was at. Goodness me. I want equity and I want cash flow on my property, okay? I am okay with this if I'm planning to buy and hold it, because I at least have another exit strategy. I can list it and I can be good. I could put more rehab into it if something comes up and list it and still be profitable. I'm not going to be planning to do that as my exit strategy. I'm going to be running the numbers like what I had them at, right? 7. So I'm going to pay for title insurance. I'm going to need a little bit of holding cost. I'm only going to just do like a couple weeks of rehab on it. And then I'm going to be able to rent it out for $1,100 according to the market, right? Well, I have equity still. If I put 7 and 5 back here, right? I still have equity. Actually, I like that better. I don't know if that would actually work, but I have equity. And then in certain markets, I would buy this. In certain markets, this is not going to work because you're going to end up looking at what people can pick up properties for and rent them out. And it's probably going to be easier for them to pick up a buy and hold, at that closer to that 2% mark. But usually those are sub $100,000 ARVs. I will let y'all know that they're in the lower end areas. And this is just how this works. What you can do also is like, if you're comping on PropStream, and I'll show you guys this a little bit more tomorrow, you will see rental comps. If you're comping on Privy, you'll see rental comps. And you can look and you can see the transaction history and you can see the rent rates. The interest rates that your buyer had to purchase this at, right? Like, because that's a perfect buyer for you. And if you don't know what that is, and I'm not going to go through it on this call because, like I said, but if you can go to mortgagecalculator.org and you type in what the taxes are, you type in what the insurance is, what the purchase price is, the amount down, the interest rate, so on and so forth, a 30-year loan, and you can figure out what their monthly payment would be. Subtract that from the rent. Consider that you're going to have, property managers for some of these people. You're going to have repairs, vacancy, maintenance, things like that. And then all of a sudden, you're sitting there telling, your network of buyers that this property cash flows because it's a 1% when it doesn't cash flow at all. It has equity. I like a little bit of equity. I like a okay, comfortable cash flow. So I'm not like, especially like if it's an older, I don't even like buying older properties or rentals. And this is why, because you have a lot more expenses. And all of a sudden you're not making money on that as a rental because people just aren't considering, like they're just hoping just that equity builds up. But interest rates are high. And so this is how I utilize this calculator to get a good, solid idea. And yes, you're just going to have to understand like the different levels of markets, what they want. Like, so I'll give you an example. Like when we went into the first 50-50-50, we thought we were locking up bangers left and right in Kansas City. So all the dang old buyers wanted like 2.5 to 3% rentals for them. And this is where this comes from, because I was like, what? I thought everybody was good with a 1% rental. And they're like, no, because this, that, and the third. So like, truly, we learned so much through going to truly nationwide and going to all these crazy different markets and all these crazy different price points within those markets and all these places. This is where it all comes from. And that's so that we can teach you guys to be able to do this no matter where you're at, Let's see. This calculator is awesome, y'all. Super helpful to have. Thank you, Adrian. How do you get that rent percentage? Well, like it automatically calculates it. Technically speaking, you can make this box aqua. You just put in the rent rate and it calculates it based on all the information you put in. If that makes sense. So it's the rent rate divided by your all-in number, really. So your all-in number is your purchase price, your rehab, your holding, your closing costs. And there you have it. That is where it comes from. Crispy bacon! How do you do, good sis? It's been a minute. I haven't seen you since the last 50-50-50, I don't think. I got a lead who wants to sell, but wants to sell with the tenants in place. They pay $700, but the market rent is $1,100. ARV is $140. Can I wholesale it with tenants in place? No lease. I'll tell you, like I tell my dear, I won't even say her name. But if you're watching out there, which I hope you are, if you're not, hopefully you watch later. She tells me there's no easy answer for you. There's just no easy. I feel like I'm talking to Einstein. There's no easy answer with you. And I'm like, it's because you ask questions like this. I don't know. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I don't have enough details. Is it month to month? Are they there for the next 10 years? Will the tenants move out? Like, oh, it says no lease. I mean, what market is it in? What's the asking price? What's the amount of repairs they're going to need? All the things matter. Like, so I love it when people ask me stuff like this, where I'm just like, I don't know, what are the numbers? Like, what are the circumstances? So, like, if you have ever, which you have, I believe, sent in a deal to us, we ask a certain set of questions to be submitted if you're going to be submitting a deal and asking us, like, if we'll JV it with you. Well, I would ask those same questions or give those same details to ask those kinds of questions. If this is in Florida where you're at, yeah. I mean, Florida is landlord friendly, but yeah, someone can buy and evict on their own. That doesn't mean they will on this particular one. Again, it just depends on that purchase price. Like, what are their holding costs to hold the property, you know? It just depends. I mean, sometimes buyers will do that, like, no problemo. Sometimes they're like, it ain't worth it. Isn't it reasonable to market a rental with less equity if it will cash flow at a high percentage upon purchase, but still needs a reasonable amount of rehab? Sometimes. God love you, Casey. You're another one of those that wants to ask like this question, and it's like, my dog. This is why I wanted you to watch this, because I know that you struggle with like rentals and multi, like comping them and underwriting them, and I get it. Like, I feel that pain and so badly. I'm working to have so many levels of this where we're teaching it, but it really always comes back to the numbers and the location and like the property. And it's like I tell her, I'm not Einstein. I'd like to think I'm fairly or somewhat intelligent in some areas. But I'm not Einstein necessarily with this. Maybe I am. I don't think so. I haven't invented anything like he did or whatever. But like, if you tell me 2 out of the 15 things I need to know, you can expect me to say, yeah, sometimes, or maybe. It depends. I need all 15 of those things. In certain circumstances, yes. There's not going to be a blanket answer for you. Like, even if you were just in like Dallas, Fort Worth, or Tampa, or wherever, like, that's not going to apply to every section and area. Like, you have lower ends of a market and luxury ends of a market. Like, it's not going to apply to every property. You've got to run the numbers. You've got to figure out where the end buyers will buy that specific property. Like, I mean, I'm just going to say, does it cash flow at a higher percentage? I mean, like, we're talking about like hundreds of dollars. If it's in like a certain area, sometimes that works. Like, so one of the other scenarios that always got me on this one was understanding who in the heck these end buyers were in like downtown areas like Boston, Baltimore, San Diego, where like they're trying to buy and hold some stuff that like rents out for $3,000 a month at like $600,000. Like I have no idea how they were doing that, but I've seen that like drastically drop off, like New Jersey, like this, like that. And I'm like, are they just planning on holding it? Like, how does that even cover their expense to be all in on this? Like, are they just waiting? I still to this day don't know this answer. I think those people are crazy. Maybe it's just because they're turning it into like some of those areas. Sometimes it's like they're adding another level onto renting it out while they can, or they're house hacking, or they're turning every level into a rental and secret sauce. Like they're not, or whatever. Like they're renting out rooms to college students. They're doing all these crazy things and pad splits and whatever. And they're counting on just their costs getting covered, or maybe they're doing it for tax write-offs or whatever. They're writing off losses so the tenants are paying down that asset, and then they'll turn around and list it. I couldn't honestly tell you. But sometimes, yeah, you'll find areas and buyers where those numbers are just wackadoodle. And I say all of this to say the comps should reveal themselves. Going back to that rule on this, Casey, getting all those questions answered and getting those numbers in. If you look at those rental numbers on PropStream or Privy, you should be able to see who bought it, when they bought it, and how much they paid for it, and try to see what kind of condition it was in. But like particularly like what their loan looks like, and you should see some common data there, right? And that should kind of help you like answer that question, because you will get crazy like markets with buy and hold, and it is harder to run those numbers. But for those of you who are like, "Ooh, this seems like complicated," look, I get it. You may have to practice at this. At the end of the day, run it for flip numbers. Run it for flip numbers. You're not going to screw up. You're not going to go wrong. Post in the group, phone a friend, like that kind of thing, just because, or go back and study some more. You're not going to like lose out on a deal because you're $5,000 different because you can market it as a buy and hold. Why do you want to narrow your buyer's pool anyways? Now, that being said, Casey was running into like some multi-use, and he's more asking like some of this stuff for like multifamily, like smaller multifamily is where he was like, how do I, he's like, I'm having a problem, calculating these numbers, right? So all of that to say, I think you got a couple in Sandusky. I think they were probably around 2%ers, if I remember them correctly. And I did run those numbers on them initially when you had sent them in. I think they're around 2%ers at the end of the day. And it's like in a market like that, yeah, that's all day and like easy movers, But if those same numbers might not work in like Kansas City or St. Louis and certain areas of those, cities. So make sure you're comping it not just for the comps, you guys. You gotta comp it on as is. Like if your buyers can go pick up a buy and hold in the same condition as yours for $10,000 on the market and you're trying to sell this for 25, it's not going to work for you. Do I have resources on getting solid repair estimates? Yes, that is something in Titanium University. I had a buyer turn me down today for a property that was a great flip, but he wanted to buy and hold, flip, and rent, but the rehab was too much for him. I'll be honest with you. Yeah, I don't like doing deep flips for my buy and holds. I don't like totally repairing a property And like sometimes that's avoidable. Like to me, that's not a good candidate in most areas for buy and hold. Like if I have to do everything inside and outside, like I want to cash my money in, you know. Um, and I sometimes I don't want to go through all of that trouble to cash it in and have that kind of loan payment and low cash flow. Does that make sense? So that's kind of what happens on those like really distressed properties is like, yeah, $100,000 rehab for buy and hold the cash flow. Like I better have like a bajillion dollars in equity. You know what I mean? Or like I better be able to like do some kind of weird little strategy on like I wouldn't flip a house for 100,000 to hold it. But some people will in some places. It just depends on the house. If it's like a 3 level in Baltimore or something like that, they will. Or if it's like a quad and like the purchase price is really low, and they have that for life and they're leaving it to their kids, well, yeah, they might do it, you know. A lot of great takeaways from today. Ezra Sensei? No, I'm just kidding. Thanks, Casey. I really do hope it helps. I really was hoping that you were still there for like utilizing this to just get yourself over some of those hurdles, getting quick numbers while you're on the phone with those sellers. And like, I get it. Like, I would get so tripped up. Like, you guys don't even I couldn't even tell you the amount of time I spent just racking my brain on how to figure out how to run number. Like I did not understand how to run numbers for buy and hold for a solid minute back in the day. So it is with great honor and pleasure that I share this and hope to save you guys some headaches. He would have bought it 15 cents on the dollar. Yeah. Georgia. I do love Georgia. 15, 25. I mean, you can use like that rule of thumb rehab, but I wouldn't like it's just a rule of thumb. So, um, yeah, guys, I like that's just it's multiple levels of that. So I wouldn't even say it's just that Angel. So depends on the market, yeah. At the end of the day, guys, the reason that I sit here and I do this is to, help you guys, overcome some of those hurdles. I'm gonna go for just one more quick. Right, Adrian. $60 a square foot. Yeah, sometimes we be doing that crazy stuff, right? It depends on like the sub market of the market, right? Even sometimes too. Yeah, in North Carolina. Some places in North Carolina, I bet you made a fat whop on that one. Okay, so really quickly, let's just punch in some as I wrap. This is me wrapping up this video, guys. So if you have any last second questions, letting you know. You better get them in because I'm about to wrap. I'm going to put this in here really quickly as the numbers that somebody sent us for a property the other day. Now, I think the ARV was like 100,000. I think the repairs were 35,000. The contract price to the seller, I think, was 22,000. And they tried to say they thought that we should sell it at 50,000. So that would be, sorry. I think they said they wanted to sell it at 50,000. Okay. So, make that make sense. They sent this into us for a JV deal. Make that make sense. Okay. again, going back into this, some of you want to look at that profit percentage. And again, I wanted to run that example for you. 15% profit, 16% profit will not work on this one. If you want to try to market this deal out and get a $15,000 wholesale fee on a contract price that's $22,000, like, you are not viewing this correctly. That's why I don't teach you to pay attention to that profit percentage. Even though as a buyer, I will look at that number at some point because I know my markets that I buy in. And like, I know what that number should be in that market, but I don't teach anybody to be looking at that number if you're not the end buyer. You might talk on your dispositions team to it. This is my summary. You need to get more realistic about this situation right here, right? That 26% profit sounds great, but that's not even that great of a deal. You dig? So I think I told that person, you need to be more like 17 for this to be a good deal. That's a 31% profit percentage. So you see how drastically different the numbers look at in different like price brackets. So rather than me telling you what profit percentage you need to be at per the price bracket, I teach you to think like an end buyer because it's going to serve you so much on this calculator with, like, just learn the web, guys. Learn where end buyers buy. Learn to be able to apply it to any property in any price point in any market in this country. This is what we use to do it. You don't need some like cheat chart spreadsheet that tells you in like Kansas City, sub $100,000. Like, you need to be at, a 25% profit percentage. So it's not going to apply to every property. And the more you try to like put that in that category, the more you're just not getting where end buyers buy. So don't focus on that number. Okay. Now let's do a whopper. Let's do another one. You have a $450,000 property that you have $70,000 remodel to fix it, and that's where they want to be. Okay. That's a 10% profit. Now, if they were selling to me for $250, they're selling at $250. I'm going to at least try to get 15 on that. I kind of also tend to look at like half of the closing costs is where I'd at least like to land on this wholesale fee. Just as a rule of thumb, not mandatory, but you just don't want to be egregious. You don't want to be putting in a 22% contract price and a $25,000 wholesale fee, and like doesn't even make the deal make sense because that's where you want to be. Like, I've had so many people say that, right? Now, like, this is a deal I will do all day long and it's 14%, right? So say you have 380 and you have a $60,000 repairs, but sorry, maybe that 380 is actually only $50,000 in repairs. Okay. And as an end buyer, 265 is my purchase price. I'm going to need that purchase price to be more like right around there. I might even do, right around there. Not so much. Yeah, I probably would do around like, I would probably do that at a 10% profit. Now let's just say the same property really only needed $35,000 in repairs. Nope. Nope. I would probably buy this one at less than 9% profit percent or less than 10% profit percentage. So you see why that profit percentage can just totally range. I was trying to get it to a number where you guys could see, oops, why it isn't about anything except for the specific property and the repairs that it needs. I would do that. I would do that flip in in my market. I would probably do it. Like I would do that flip because $35,000 is like a 2-week project on this in my market. That's less than 10% profit. So no, you don't need to aim for 25%. Like I said, if I make it 35,000 and it's an easy flip for me, this is going to be a lower square footage property probably for me to purchase this. So I'm getting paint, carpet, I'm cleaning up whatever I need to clean up. Not paint, carpet, paint, and flooring. And I'm moving on with my day. You know what I'm saying? I'm doing some easy repairs. I'm doing an easy rehab. I get to make, something stand out that's pretty about this property compared to the neighbors or the comps. I want this to move quickly, and this is going to be like a smaller square footage. This is not going to be a 2,500 square foot house. See what I'm saying? Like this is not going to, this is a property that's not going to take me, 6 months to turn around. Right. So a 9% profit percentage, I do this, but like then on some of the other examples I showed you, they needed to be like, I think there was one that was a 30% profit percentage. You see what I'm saying? So when people ask me at the end of the day, where do end buyers buy? I want to know what profits percentage I need to be at. Now, all of you know why I'm like, I don't know, 10 to 50. I usually say 10 to 20, sometimes 25. Usually I don't use the example of 30. And then they look at me and are like, well, how do I know? Like you don't focus on that number. Focus on that number on repairs. Now, I'm not talking to my end buyers going like, hey, this is a 9% return on your profit on this. So, like as a buyer, like I don't pay as much attention to this. It's like, is this easy? Do I want to do this flip? Is it like right around the corner? Like whatever, like I want to turn a quick $35,000. Hey, I bet you I can turn that into, a little bit more 42 because it's me, or, because I have great materials or something like that, in which case I can turn that into more than that. Right. So the understanding where your end buyers will buy, if you get that, like where that makes sense, this will hit a variety of different types of buyers all over the country, whatever price point you're in, whatever market you're in. And that's really what I wanted you guys to understand coming out of today, first and foremost. And it only took me an hour and 48 minutes to get there, but I hope this did drastically help all of you guys. We do utilize the square footage, and we add on for certain things like mechanicals. The major ticket items is how our team runs it. We don't really use the rule of thumb rehab calculator that Angel had brought up. I would lower the wholesale fee. I don't know what that is exactly referring to, but yeah. Sometimes we do lower the wholesale fee. Sometimes we up that bad boy. It's all about making the deal make sense for everybody, start to finish. Let everybody win. Win yourself. Sometimes you hit a rip. Sometimes you hit a dinker. Sometimes you're bunting. Yeah, I think our nationwide average is like, it fluctuates, I think, between like 16 to 19,000, depending on what time of year you asked us in the past year. I think the year before was about the same. So, all right, my loves. Thank you for all consistently watching, joining along, learning, asking questions, engaging. It does really make a difference for me personally to know that I'm doing all of this and that it's going to make a difference for you guys in your lives and businesses and help you avoid some of the things that were really hard for me to figure out. So thus I've simplified them in a way that I can convey that information and try to speed up that process for you. I really do hope this has helped a lot. And don't forget that, you need to be a part of the web. You got to know where end buyers buy, and that should help you make sure more of your deals make it to the finish line. I appreciate you guys, and I hope that you join me tomorrow. Going live comping with Benson from PropStream. So we're going to be showcasing how I utilize PropStream. For those of you that know me, been a PropStream girl for many, many moons. So I hope to see you guys there tomorrow. I appreciate you. All right, Leonard, you can email the email rjbates at titanium.investments. It is in this feed from earlier. You're welcome. We do this most days of the week, Anthony, at 2:22 Central Standard Time for different topics within our group in the vault, if you aren't a part of that. Angel, love you, mean it. Truly the best class I've had in a long time. Thanks, Facebook user. This is just the free version. You got Benson. Yes, I do. And I'm very excited. I feel like this has been many years in the making. Benson doesn't even know what's going. Like, he don't know what's about to hit him tomorrow. He got RJ last time. I've been the PropStream girl for those of you who've been following for years or know who I am, not just RJ for many years. Y'all be knowing I'm the prop. Like, I am a great lover of PropStream as a product, and have been a huge supporter and fan of PropStream for many years. And I love it as a tool. I will always have PropStream, like, as long as it does the things I'm going to show you about tomorrow. There was a minute there where I was really sad about PropStream because they had a bump in the road for a couple months. But we utilize a lot of comp tools, and there's truly different things that I like about each and every one of them. But PropStream and I go way back. Like, it's been my constant for many years. We do utilize Privy, and like, I went live a couple of weeks ago, I think. There's some amazing features on Privy that I love that PropStream doesn't have. Even Batch has some features that PropStream doesn't have, and PropStream has some things that neither of those have. We are nationwide. We do high volume. We're going to have all of those tools. I'm going to show you guys how we utilize them because we do have them. And there's different things that I love about each and every one of them. So I love that I get to showcase that to you guys because I'm very passionate about it. Like, when we very first started this, we didn't have a lot of these resources. Like, I remember when PropStream became a product. That's how long I've been loving on PropStream. Like, it was like West Coast only, California, like, when we heard of PropStream. We go way back. It was our first. So I have a special place in my heart for PropStream. Anyways, yeah, like, but there's just been so many cool things that developed through time, even on PropStream. I've watched it develop and become what it is today. And we've added on tools because we utilize them. It gives us power, having the practice, the experience, the education and the tools makes you very powerful in what you do. And so we're never going to sell ourselves short, and we're never going to stop testing those things for you guys, because that's what we do here at Titanium. So I do use Privy as well. Yes, we do. We do use Privy. We've had Privy for about since last year. And I gotta tell you, I mean, like I said, I went over it. It's got some really cool features. Leonard, unfortunately, any questions like you have need to be sent to that same email. No, we do not have a free resource to educate you on how to dispo it yourself if it's not a JV deal for us necessarily, that are not on RJ's YouTube, if that makes sense. I would just hit back that email with like what specific questions you have, and somebody might be able to help you on that. I will say, Leonard, if we denied doing a JV for it, I don't know if there might be a big chance you're not going to be able to dispo it without a price drop. I didn't know prop stream has been around that long. Goodness gracious. Let me try to think back. I almost want to say like 2015, 2016. But I'm terrible at that stuff. That's way more RJ's. We do use cartel mode. We use God mode too. Artemis mode is my jam. Anthony. The difference between like what Anthony said that and the way that I said that, I'm like, yeah, I would really consider asking some deeper questions, because if we denied it, you probably off on numbers somewhere there. But that's okay. Like, look, we've done it many, many times. So you don't learn if you don't try, and you don't continue to figure out where you went wrong, when you went wrong, right? It's part of the process. So, all right, guys, on that note, Leonard, that's because your as-is comps are what you have it locked up for. I ran numbers on that deal. It's not sellable. You need to list that on the market with an agent. That it is what it is. You're not going to be able to like dispo that. I remember that deal. I remember that email, and the asking price is market value, and I think the comps were on the market for years. So it's the cost of that new construction that you're probably missing there. But yeah, it's not a deal. Builders buy a little bit differently than the rest of a fix and flip. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that's just, they're not going to buy that when they could go pick one up on the MLS. If you add a fee to it, that makes it over the market value of the property. It sure does take practice. First time I heard of prop stream was back in 09, 010, the REI seminar at the hotel. All good times. Oh my gosh. No way. Maybe I do have that year really far off. I can't stinking remember. I felt like it was like, we've only been doing this for 10 years. And so like whenever I met Paul, I know it had to be like 2015. it had to be 2015. But they were still just California, and like they expanded to the West Coast, I think. Either that or I got my stories mixed up. Sydney, I don't know. Thank you, Leonard. Hundreds of sub 2 deals before I got it right. Oh Lord, yes. You know, especially with sub 2, lots of complications with that and understanding the exit strategy, and things like that. So, all right, guys. On that note, I'm out because my nose keeps itching and I'm tired of itching it on camera in front of y'all. Have a wonderful evening. I hope to see you guys tomorrow at 2:22 Central Standard Time. We'll see you then.